There are a couple of community updates this morning smattered throughout the agenda. We're going to start with an update on the second International Indian Ocean Expedition by Raleigh Hood.
All right. Okay, good morning. Can you hear me okay? The first thing I want to do is report out on the U.S. Indian Ocean Science Workshop, but before I do that, I want to give everybody a little bit of an update on the second International Indian Ocean Expedition. And it is happening now. It's going on in the Indian Ocean as we speak, originally planned for 2015 to 2020, and it's going to be extended to 2025. It's sponsored by the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, the Indian Ocean Goose Program, and the Scientific Committee on Oceanic Research. There is a science plan and an implementation plan, which you can get at the Joint Project Office or just Google IIOE2. There are many countries involved and participating in the expedition. I'm not going to bother to run through it, but of course they include the United States. And as you saw yesterday, Kathy talked about the IO7N Ghost Ship line, which is part of IIOE2. There are already special issues being produced in Deep Sea Research Part 2. The first special issue has already been fully populated. There are 21 submitted manuscripts. We're now working on a second volume. The submission target date was May 31st, but it's been extended, and it will remain open until that issue is fully populated. There's 11 manuscripts submitted so far. So there's a lot going on and already products coming in. If you want to find out about the expedition, you should visit the website for the Joint Project Office. Again, you can just Google IIOE2. So that's all I want to say about the broader international effort. Most of what I want to talk about is the U.S. Indian Ocean Science Workshop. It was convened at Scripps last September. It was sponsored by OCB, also NASA Physical Oceanography Program, NOAA, Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and the Indo-US Science and Technology Forum. There were 70 participants in that workshop, mostly from the United States, but also India, France, and China. It was a highly interdisciplinary group. There were biological, chemical, and physical oceanographers, and even marine geologists and one deep sea biologist. The goal of the workshop was to identify scientific priorities that are specifically tailored to guide U.S. research interests and assets and participation in the second International Indian Ocean Expedition. And we have a draft document where we identified 5 research themes. It's actually a 4th draft document. It's been reviewed by the U.S. IIOE2 Steering Committee. It's been reviewed by the workshop participants. And at present, it's being reviewed by the broader U.S. Community, folks that have interest in Indian Ocean research. Today, I'm presenting to you NSF and OCB and program managers on the outcomes. Our next steps, and we're working on it, is to motivate coordinated proposal submissions to NSF, NASA, and NOAA in 2018 and 2019 so we can get projects funded and in the water as part of IIOE2. And we're also working on securing funds for the steering committee or some form of a U.S. project office. The overarching goal of U.S. IIOE2 is synonymous with the international effort to advance our understanding of interactions among geologic, oceanic, and atmospheric processes that give rise to the complex physical dynamics of the Indian Ocean region and determine how those dynamics affect climate, extreme events, marine biochemical cycles, ecosystems, and human populations. But the U.S. effort is more focused than the international effort. There are 5 specific research themes, and there's even an explicit theme in the U.S. plan that's focused on marine geology and geophysics, deep ocean biochemistry, ecology, and the subsurface biosphere in the Indian Ocean. So what I'd like to do is quickly walk you through those 5 research themes. Theme 1 is the physical, biochemical, and ecological dynamics of the Seychelles-Chagos thermocline ridge. And I'm curious to know how many people in this room know what the Seychelles Chagos Thermocline Ridge is. If you raise your hand, if you know what that is. All right, it's like 3 people.
Sounds great.
It is great. So, as you know, in the equatorial Atlantic and Pacific, those basins upwell on the equator on the eastern side of the basin. Because of the monsoon dynamics, the Indian Ocean does not upwell on the equator or in the east. Rather, it upwells in the west, south of the equator between about 5 and 10 south. And what you're seeing here is the upwelling signature in the west called the Seychelles Chagos Thermocline Ridge. There's a nutrient upwelling signature associated with it. There's a chlorophyll signature associated with it. And there's also a higher trophic level response. This is tuna catch in that area. So the scientific questions are, what is the relative importance of local versus remote forcing on the 3-dimensional circulation of the SCTR, and how does this forcing vary on intraseasonal, seasonal, and interannual timescales? How do physical processes and related biochemical factors affect the seasonal cycle of primary productivity, the microbial food web, and ecosystem dynamics? Is the prey of large tuna in the SCTR supported by advection and convergence from adjacent ocean waters or from local upwelling of nutrients that enhances primary and secondary productivity, or alternatively, is the presence of those tuna schools related to spawning? That's theme 1. Theme 2 is physical biochemical budgets and exchanges. How does the Indian Ocean heat budget vary over time scales from seasonal to decadal? What is the role of the subtropical gyre, the shallow and deep overturning cells, mode water formation, and the Indonesian through-flow and the Agulhas system in basin-wide heat and nutrient budgets and their changes? How are the Indian Ocean heat and nutrient budgets linked to decadal variability of sea surface temperature, sea level, primary productivity, and food web dynamics? And the Indian Ocean is very, very unusual in terms of its heat budget. It exports a huge amount of heat, unlike other ocean basins, but it's very poorly constrained. And we're interested in better constraining the heat and the nutrient budgets, and in particular things like what's the role of the ITF, the Indian Ocean through flow, which is bringing warm water and nutrients into the Indian Ocean, unlike nothing like it in any other ocean basin. What is the role of the Agulhas current, which is taking that heat and nutrients, we don't know, out and into the Atlantic and into the Southern Ocean? Theme 3 is monsoon dynamics, more of a physically oriented theme. How do the multi-scale ocean dynamics and air-sea interactions in the tropical Indian Ocean influence variability and predictability of the monsoon on subseasonal to seasonal timescales? What are the root causes of biases and errors in key tropical regions in state-of-the-art climate and Earth system models? And those key tropical regions are these areas in the equatorial Indian Ocean that affect the monsoons. What are the dominant low-frequency natural variability patterns and timescales in the Indian Ocean? How are the low-frequency variabilities in the Indian Ocean affected by the response in the Southern and Pacific Oceans to global warming? So we're interested in questions like, this is the circulation patterns during the southwest monsoon. What affects the onset, timing, and intensity of the southwest monsoon? You see the south monsoon winds, fin ladder jet, upwelling response, precipitation response. And similarly, what affects the onset of the northeast monsoon? Winds blowing down from the Tibetan Plateau causing cooling of the surface ocean. So those are the kinds of questions we're interested in theme 3. Theme 4, probably the most relevant to this community, is physical, biochemical, and ecological contrast between the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. What controls the source variability, local ventilation, biological oxygen demand, and biological and biochemical impacts of the 2 northern Indian Ocean oxygen minimum zones? Everybody here knows about the UMCES in the Indian Ocean. Are the northern Indian Ocean UMCES uniquely sensitive to climate change? There's evidence that they are sensitive to climate change. How will climate change impact the UMCES, and in particular the interaction between monsoon intensity and timing, increased anthropogenic nutrient and carbon inputs, low oxygen, and acidification? And finally, what are the spatial and temporal extents of nutrient limitations in the Indian Ocean? They're not really understood. How do these limitations impact the microbial food web and primary production that fuels biological oxygen demand? As many of you know, there's dramatic contrast in the physics and ventilation in the Arabian Sea versus the Bay of Bengal. This is a weird scale, with the Arabian Sea being quite salty and the Bay of Bengal very fresh. The stratification is much stronger in the Bay of Bengal, so they have very different ventilation properties. And they also have very different biological production and oxygen demand because there's much higher productivity in the Arabian Sea than the Bay of Bengal. And so how does ventilation versus biological oxygen demand combine to create the OMZs? There's OMZs in both the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. These are oxygen profiles, and the profiles are very similar, as you can see. You can barely tell them apart. But the oxygen concentrations are slightly lower in the Arabian Sea, which results in strong denitrification signal. This is the nitrate and nitrite profiles, whereas that signal does not exist yet in the Bay of Bengal. But it the global warming may tip the balance of the Bay of Bengal into denitrification. So the last theme is a geological theme in deep sea biology and biochemistry. I'm not going to go into the details of this theme in this community. A lot of it's focused on the ultra slow spreading center in the southwest Indian Ocean. Our MG&G colleagues are very interested in this region. It has a lot of really important and unique attributes. Also interested in the hydrothermal circulation in this area and the biochemistry and ecology of the deep water column and also the subsurface biosphere. And this shows some of the vent locations. But these areas are very, very poorly sampled and understood. And there's many other MG&G oriented questions. Our geologist friends are interested in the Bengal and the Indus fans, these huge sediment plumes that come out from the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. They're also interested in a variety of other poorly understood tectonic areas like the Central Indian Ridge, Sunda Subduction Zone, Elan Bank, etc. So that's it. That's the themes. The plan also articulates a very specific strategy for folks to get funded under the U.S. effort, and that plan and that model follows the Geotraces program. And the Geotraces program model is to make the agencies aware of this expedition and to get the community to submit proposals to core programs to get funded to participate. Same model as Geotraces. And the plan articulates specific guidance under each theme. So if you're interested in one of these themes, you can go in and look, and the plan says, here's what you need to do. Here's the program you need to go to. Okay? So there's some other stuff in the plan as well, and that's it.